16. That's what we're starting with.
You just said that you weren't going to start with something stupid.
Well, guess what? I did anyway. So yeah, we have Wizard Kid Gets Past a Zelda Dungeon is the name of this one. More commonly known as Through the Trapdoor, I believe. I don't actually remember what it's called. Okay. And joining us today is myself. So, yeah, this time we're only doing the one chapter because this one has a little bit more going on than some of the previous ones. Having just read through it, it is. I feel like this one is shorter than I remember it being. Honestly, they kind of just breeze through this stuff, and I imagined it taking longer than it actually did. But maybe that's just because, like, it's kind of the climax of the book, and I assumed the movie made a bigger deal out of it. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah, I don't know, but going over the mandatory starting stuff here.
Yes.
I've got some really stupid localization changes. Most of them are just random, like, changes in the way things are phrased, instead of, like, actual cultural differences. So we have, what are you on about turned into what are you talking about? I feel like I've heard people say, what are you on about? But I guess that one is more British sounding.
It strikes me as British.
There's two instances of, well, there's nothing for it, turned into, well, there's no other choice, and there was nothing else for it became, there was no alternative. This one I thought was particularly stupid because way back in Chapter 6, King's Cross, I actually made note of the phrase, there was nothing else for it, because I'm like, that's like a weird sounding phrase. I don't think I've heard people say that. So I guess they did change it for this chapter, but not for that one.
Yeah.
So I guess that one just slipped through. And then this one, I'm not sure if this was just a typo in the resource I was looking at, but this want thinking about became this needs thinking about. Okay,
yeah,
so
I think warrant. I think want in this case can be a synonym for warrants.
well, like if it was this want thinking about, that seems awkward, but I could at least kind of get that. But just want singular seemed really weird to me.
It does seem kind of weird to me. Yeah, I got it from context, but I'm not actually sure if it's a legit way of saying it that anybody would do.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Got a couple advancements to our counters here. We finally have a new one-off character, which I almost missed. I actually remembered that this was a thing like 5 minutes before sitting down to record this. Elfric the Eager was mentioned by Hermione as some random historical figure that she studied about and didn't need for the History of Magic exam. That we have no idea who this person is.
Incredible. Well, he was eager.
Apparently.
We know that much.
And he had an uprising.
Right.
For Unlocalized Britishisms, I put in come off it as a thing that Ron says. I really like that phrase. I went through a period of saying it a lot.
Yeah.
I think like during when I was recording like Kaizo Mario 64, I said it all the time. I don't remember where I picked it up from. There's also one that I think is debatable, which we'll get to later. And then for Whimsy, we just have this entire chapter. The entirety of this Zelda dungeon is like so unnecessary and like needlessly complicated, and yet also like way too simple. Like it's bizarre. I don't know what else to call it.
Right.
So, did you have any comments prepared or anything, or are we gonna get started
about that stuff? No.
Well, like comments from the last video.
Oh, I forgot that we were starting with those.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. There's only one comment that I feel like actually warrants any mention, and that's not that the other comments were bad, but just
Yeah, just ones that bring up more conversation.
Right. Yeah. Is that apparently when we mentioned how like people were mad. This is about something later in the series, but people were mad that like the Fiend Fire was able to destroy a Horcrux when it hadn't been established or whatever.
Right.
Apparently in the movie version of Deathly Hallows Part 2, well, you know what I mean. In that movie, they actually do stab at the thing with the fang first before throwing it into the fiend fire.
Okay.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a moot point either way.
Right.
And related to that subject, I actually have to eat my words a little bit, but we'll get to that in a minute when we actually get to the
Okay.
part that it's relevant.
Sure.
So, yeah, I was. The only other thing is, there's probably a more elegant time to bring this up, but it came to my attention through Reddit posts within the previous week that apparently Harry goes through this entire book
Oh
and a
yeah.
movie without ever using a spell. If we count stuff like the stuff he did as a child, and like regrowing his hair and that kind of stuff, and like vanishing the glass at this like with the snake and that kind
Right.
of stuff, like he does do magic, but he never actually. And there's like the sparks that come from his wand in like Ollivander's, but like aside from that, you never actually see him do any magic in this entire story. Anytime that it's like implied, it's like, oh, he was among the classmates doing this spell. Like, you never
Right.
actually see it happen. It's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It made me
apparently,
laugh when I found out about it.
yeah, apparently the first time you ever actually see him use a spell is the dueling club in the second book. So,
Mm.
it'll be a while before we get to that.
Yes. So it starts out with they're preparing for exams and then they're doing them, and like Harry's already stressed from the exams, but he's also like, oh, what if Voldemort just shows up any minute and bursts through the door? And just, I don't know, the visual of Voldemort actually just showing up during class and murdering Harry on the spot is kind of funny to me. It'd be really anticlimactic.
Yeah, and this is more relevant to the third book, but at this point in the series, we don't know what Voldemort looks like.
hmm
So like he's just kind of like this vague, dangerous like threat that exists, but we don't really know much about him. And there's a line in the third book when Harry's asking Lupin like why he wasn't allowed to like fight against the Boggart, and Lupin says like, well, if you did, I assume it would have taken the form of Voldemort and people would have freaked out. And for some reason, I had this like mental visual here of Voldemort just being like very short and like kind of hyperactive, just like running around like like zapping people with this wand. Like I don't know why, but I
Like
like
what, when you first read the book, or?
yes, like like just that visual of like the whole class is there and then Harry gets in front of the wardrobe, the Boggart comes out. It's like it's
Oh my
I
god.
don't know where I got this from, but I love that visual, and so that's the same Voldemort that would dramatically burst through the door while they're taking exams. Is just
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Oh my god. Good shit. Um, so yeah, and then they mentioned how it had become like swelteringly hot or something, and I'm like, this is Scotland. This is 1991. Would it really get that hot? Like,
um,
you did some research on
yeah,
this.
I looked it up a little bit. So like, I looked at that line and I'm just like, I mean, northern places still get hot occasionally. Like I talk with.
Scotland is really far north.
Yeah, but I'm used to like I'm talking with Nicole who's in Canada and she's like, yeah, we get like these ridiculously cold winters, but we also get like really hot summers. So I'm like, I figure they get it occasionally. But yeah, I looked it up, and the average summer temperature is 15 to 17 Celsius, which is 59 to 63 Fahrenheit, which is very cold. Um,
Yes.
I,
Well, I
I
wouldn't say very
well,
cold.
no,
I
it's
would
it's
say
not.
that's
It's
like
like considering that as a summer temperature. Like for me, room
the summer.
temperature is like
Room temperature is like 22
70.
Celsius, right?
It's like it
I
would.
thought room
It's
temperature was like, or even like, or like 25 or something. 25 C and F. 77. Okay, maybe not. No, I guess not 25. What the hell am I talking about? It'd be
but
like 20, 22.
so it's like apparently like the average summer day would still be colder
Yeah, it's
than
like
room
17.
temperature, which is really weird to me, and honestly sounds pretty nice. Because I freaking hate the heat down here.
Right.
But yeah, apparently the record high recorded in anywhere in Scotland was 2003. It hit 32.9 Celsius, which is 91.2 Fahrenheit, which is hot, but definitely not unbearable. Like we
For me, it's
regularly
unbearable.
we regularly hit about 100 down here, but then you also have to imagine that you don't really have AC over there,
Yeah, we
and
don't.
especially not in a castle. So
Of course.
if you want to complain about it being hot, fair enough. It's probably pretty hot, but it's like I don't want it to turn into the dick measuring contest of like you think that's bad, but
Right. Yeah. So they're doing their exams, including some practicals, which
yeah. So yeah, they do these practical exams, which apparently includes making a pineapple tap dance across a desk, and then McGonagall has them turn a mouse into a snuff box.
I have to look up what that is.
Yeah.
It seems like it's the kind of thing that grandmas keep cookies in.
Well, apparently snuff is like tobacco.
Oh, I
So
see.
it's supposed to be a box for holding that. But yeah, I always like in one of the movies it's just like today we'll be turning, was it mice into water goblets or something?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like, why though? Why are we doing like, I guess for practice. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I like how this is the practical thing. It's like, don't levitate something. Make the pineapple tap dance across the desk just to prove that you can. And then like the next part of that paragraph is Snape made them all nervous, breathing down their necks while they tried to remember how to make a forgetfulness potion. Which I read that and I'm just like, yeah, yeah, that was an attempt at humor. Fair enough. Like I appreciate that. The way I wrote it down was it was a sensible chuckle.
Yes. I always have to question stuff like this though. Like, obviously people make fun of like the extremely inaccurate prediction where teachers are what used to always be. I don't know if they still do this. I assume they're not naive enough to still say this, but they used to say you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time, and then now obviously we do. But like they said like, oh, remembering how to make it, that implies to me that they don't have the reference on hand, and I'm like,
Right.
why would you ever be making a potion without the reference on hand, unless you're like in the wilderness? But I mean, there's
Yeah,
probably better things to be doing than brewing potions if you're in the wilderness. Presumably you have your wand at least,
yeah,
and if
maybe.
not, then I don't know.
I could potentially see it like there might be an instance where like you kind of are roughing it out like you said in the woods or whatever, and like you're able to identify ingredients and like use them. I don't know.
I
Here
feel like wizards just have much better tools for getting out of that situation than brewing a fucking potion.
possibly. There was oh yeah, in terms of like things that like you have to remember this because you might not always have the reference. Did you ever have to remember any of the periodic table?
No.
I don't think we really did either, but I've heard of people that did have to memorize it. And it's like,
That's weird.
why would you ever need this? Like, anytime you're going to be doing anything with chemistry or anything involving this, you're going to be able to find this thing.
Yeah.
Like,
That said, I actually do know the first few elements. Let's see. This is just
well, let's see. It's
Completely-
hydrogen, helium. Is
helium,
it
lithium, beryllium,
Okay, I already.
boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen,
I think neon is 10.
fluorine, neon, what the fuck is Na? Sodium, is it magnesium that's Mg?
I don't.
Aluminium,
We can probably be done.
silicon. I'm almost done. P is potassium. No, that's K. Fuck, what's P? Actually, I don't remember. It's P and then
Phosphorus.
whatever. Is it phosphorus? Okay, and then S is I don't
Sulfur.
know. Sulfur. That's right.
There was an episode
Cl,
of Look Around You
chlorine.
about sulfur.
Yes, there was. Chlorine. A is it A or AR? Argon. Yeah, AR. Potassium.
How far are we
calcium.
going? Okay.
That's it. Oh, up to calcium.
There was also an episode about calcium.
Yep.
Was it
Calcium displacement.
was it
Calcium image
intelligent calcium? Was that a thing?
displacement. Yeah, also known as No, maybe I'm thinking of something else. I can't
Well,
remember.
there was brown iron, which was bum civilian.
That's right. And there was also iron de Havilland.
I like Iron de Haviland.
My favorite joke from that show is still calcic image displacement. That made me fucking lose my shit.
The fucking lightning that shoots through the ceiling and creates like a holographic image of a giant pair of scissors.
That one was good too.
Anyway,
Anyway, yeah, tangent.
Look Around You is funny. You should watch it if you
Yes.
have not seen it.
Yes.
So,
So then the last one is History of Magic with more just like remembering random shit.
yeah, the thing I wrote is they have questions about quote-unquote batty old wizards who'd invented self-stirring cauldrons, which stood out to me because every time you see this class, they're always learning about goblin rebellions. So it's good to see that they apparently also learned about, like, invention pioneers of note.
Yes,
So-
basically. So then Harry's having nightmares about Voldemort. Everyone else is like, the exams are over, you don't have to worry. But, you know, he's having dreams about this hooded figure with hyper-realistic blood. It was so scary, you guys.
Yeah,
So they have...
for the record, we established the, like, prophetic dream counter and haven't
I figure that
actually
will happen
incremented
more
it
later.
because these are him, like, basically having nightmares over something he actually saw, so I don't think that
Yeah.
really counts.
Right.
But I will note, we're having a lot of instances of his scar hurting, and he, like, doesn't really know what the deal is with that, and Hermione's like, you should just go see Madame Pomfrey. He's like, no, I think it's a warning. And so I don't know if we know specifically that this thing reacts, like, within proximity to Voldemort, but we definitely learn that later.
Right. So they mentioned how after the exams, like Hermione is immediately trying to like ask them about the questions and like go over it again, and they just want nothing to do with it. And I find that funny and realistic because there was a dichotomy of that as well. When I was in secondary school, I was one of the people that always would like talk about the exam afterwards with the teachers and the other students, and like, you know, talk about what questions we did and like what we thought of them and the answers and stuff like that. But as more and more as I got older, especially in university, I just wanted nothing to do with the exams after they were done. I would just like, you know, I would leave, I would stop thinking about them, and I would go home and, you know, just not think about them. Especially in university where you can leave like there's a period in the middle where you can leave exams by yourself. Like you don't have to wait for the allotted time to finish. You can just leave. I would
Yeah,
usually finish by then.
I think I was the type to be done with it and then just kind of not care anymore. Maybe in a couple rare cases I would like remember a particular question that I had a hard time with and ask somebody, but it was definitely not often.
So yeah, and I don't know if this is a thing over there, but I always heard people call that a post-mortem. Like a post-mortem on the exam or something.
No, I don't think I've heard that term. When I saw that you wrote that in the notes, to me that just sounds like after somebody dies. Like
That is what it means, but
Okay.
people also use that term to refer to like discussing exams after they're over.
Weird.
Over here.
Also, I didn't write this down, but after reading the part where they finish their exams and then they have like a whole week left before they go home, I was trying to remember, like when I was in school, if we ever had stuff like that where we would finish our like. I think before high school we didn't even really have like exams. We would maybe have like some tests at the end of the year, but
Yeah, that's usually what we do.
I don't really remember it being like a big final thing that you have to cram for. And I'm trying to remember if it would usually happen on like the last day or like a couple days before.
I don't think we usually... It was usually
Because
like
I
that for us.
don't think we had like a whole bunch of time after we would have one of those. The only thing that I can really think of is for like a few years in like elementary school, we would have like our last day would basically just be kind of like cleaning out our desks and like tearing down all the decorations in the classroom and like just kind of winding down. And we would always do this thing where the teacher would just spray like a shit ton of shaving cream on all the desks. And we would like use that to basically clean them while also just sort of playing with it. I don't know. It was kind of stupid.
Weird. I think the last couple of days of school, like prior to like secondary school, and even the first couple years of secondary school, so basically equivalent to elementary and middle, the last couple of days would usually be like more chill. I think we would sometimes have like activity days where you could go around and play board games or sports or whatever instead of like, and that would be instead of the normal work. Or there might be classes, but teachers would just put on a movie or do a quiz or something. And by quiz, I mean like a trivia quiz type with no stakes.
Right.
So yeah.
So, giant squid.
Yeah, they're just kind of hanging out by the lake, and they're like, yeah, these two. Was it Lee Jordan and someone? I can't remember who.
Yeah, I think it was him. Oh, I want to say. Not that it matters, but... yeah, Fred George and Lee Jordan.
Yeah, they're just like, yeah, they were tickling the giant squid, and I'm like, oh, that's our introduction. Just there's a giant squid. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember going through Mark Reed's Harry Potter. When he got up to like the fourth book when we meet Dennis Creevy, who like falls out of the boat and gets like pulled back into it with the giant squid, and he's just like, "What the fuck? There's a squid!" And because like the previous mentions of it were so blink and you miss it.
Right. Yeah.
But why is this thing here?
I don't know.
And of course, because the squid is mentioned, I have to mention the fucking fanfic that was like a sex story between the squid and Hogwarts itself.
Yeah, that was right.
It's a good one.
God.
So, as they're like relaxing after the tests, there's a paragraph here that I read through, didn't process at all, and then like read a couple lines. I'm like, wait, what happened exactly? And I go back and I'm like, the fuck? It's just, Harry was quite sure the unsettled feeling didn't have anything to do with work, though. He watched an owl flutter toward the school across the bright blue sky, a note clamped in its mouth. Hagrid was the only one who ever sent him letters. Hagrid would never betray Dumbledore. Hagrid would never tell anyone how to get past Fluffy. Never. And then he like suddenly realizes, like, oh, shit, what if he got drunk? And it's like, what? What happened? Like, he sees an owl, and he's like, I never get an owl unless it's from Hagrid. Hagrid would never let Dumbledore down. It's like this weird association. Like,
that makes sense to me. That's often what my thought processes are like. I'll see something and it will remind me of something, and I'll just idly think about that until it reminds me of something else.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll be like, man, what the fuck was I thinking about in the first place? And kind of like follow my train of thought backwards. This makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely happen. It's just you don't usually see that in written form, where it's like you see the process of like your thoughts jumping from like rapidly different subjects.
Right.
And,
I mean, to be fair, I don't think in sentences in the first place, so it's kind of different. But
I mean, it's usually more like abstract ideas. But the best comparison I could think of for this one, later in the series, is in the seventh book, where he like there's like a statue that gets destroyed, and he like steps over the head, and the head is just like, oh, don't mind me, and he's like, this head reminds me of a bust that I saw last year in the Room of Requirement. Oh shit, that's where the diadem is. It's like such a weird connection.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I read this passage and I'm like, oh, Harry's pretty smart here. He's like genre savvy. He figures out that this is too contrived to not be suspicious. Like, just be a coincidence.
And I mean, to be fair, it is. Like,
yeah.
I wasn't saying it was like Harry was dumb for thinking this. It was just I thought it was weird how he came to the conclusion.
Yeah. No, fair enough. So then, they talk to Hagrid and he mentions that he got drunk or whatever, and this just surprised me because like normally the expectation is that kids media can't mention like smoking, drinking, any basically mature topics like that.
Yeah,
and yet
like,
this book can apparently get away with just outright saying he got drunk. Like,
yeah, it's like it made me think of the like ESRB rating where it's like rated T for mentions of alcohol, and it's like,
right. It's fucking stupid. Yeah, I always wondered about this. I'm like, I know that there's not really a direct like equivalent of the ESRB or whatever the movie rating board is.
Taboo 12.
Yeah. I don't think there's an equivalent, but I would think there'd be some kind of publishing standard. And so the only thing I can assume is that publishers assume that kids that read books are probably like mature enough to understand those topics, like, or
yeah.
I don't even know what the problem is. Like, kids know that drinking and smoking exists in real life anyway. It's not like putting them in the video game would promote them, but whatever.
Yeah. There's probably lots that can be said about that, and we're not the
Yeah.
people to talk about it, and this is not the place to talk about it, but
Yeah,
it was...
just made me curious because
Yeah.
I'm like, it just surprised me because I'm not used to seeing that in kids media. I'm used to people pretending it doesn't exist. I'm confused about this next part.
Yeah, you want to read out what I wrote here?
You wrote Hagrid mentioning Detroit and comets, and I responded, "Is this a reference or joke I'm not getting?"
Well, you know the Detroit one at least, right?
No.
Okay, because I've mentioned this one before.
Oh, is this in the movie?
Yeah, this is in the movie specifically.
Oh!
It's me misunderstanding what the hell Hagrid is saying because of his accent. It's this scene specifically where Harry's like, did he seem interested in Fluffy? He's like, well, of course he was interested in Fluffy. How many three-headed dogs do you come across, even when you're in the trade? And he says that, he's like, even when you're in Detroit. I swear it sounds like he says that. It's like, how many three-headed dogs do you come across, even when you're in Detroit? But then right after that, he's like, the secret to any beast is knowing how to calm it. I'm like, what do you mean knowing how to calm it? But he's like, calm it, obviously. But I always love that part. I don't know why. It's just me mishearing shit. And there was no, like, the comet thing, there was never a point where I thought he was saying that. I think I actually did think he was saying Detroit at one point, though. And I'm like, why is he saying Detroit here? What? Like, it probably took me a rewatch to figure out what he was actually saying.
Oh, I can't wait to watch this with you. Okay. So yeah, so Harry then speculates, like, Quirrell must have sent that note to get Dumbledore out of the building to create an opportunity. Oh, sorry, not Quirrell. Snape must have done, but, you know, Quirrell's the actual person behind this. But I'm like, I wonder if Quirrell actually did do this, or if Harry was wrong about that too, and if Dumbledore actually had real business elsewhere, and Quirrell just took the opportunity. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I guess we're kind of doing these out of order because before we get to learning about the, it's all kind of in the same part. Just the point is, the trio are talking to McGonagall. They're like, we need to see Dumbledore. She's like, he's in London. And apparently he flew off for London and won't be back until tomorrow. And so I'm wondering, like, so at this point, like, I don't know what excuse he was given to go there, but, like, even if he gets there and finds out, like, oh, it was, you know, it was a jape, I'm not actually needed here, and goes back, like, even if he did have something to do, I'm surprised that, like, he would be gone the whole day, because you'd think he would either just, like, go outside of the Hogwarts borders and apparate, or he would use the flu network, but I don't know if flew off was literal, and he was just...
Maybe he flew... Yeah, it could be metaphorical. It could also be he flew to the boundary and then apparated.
Possibly. It's a minor point, but
Also, Dumbledore can just apparate in and out of Hogwarts, right? If he wants, because he does that in Order of the Phoenix.
Oh god, maybe. There's that scene with, like, Fawkes when he's... Or no, that was in the movie. I think in the book, he doesn't actually do that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I do remember a line in Half-Blood Prince where Harry's like, I thought you couldn't apparate within Hogwarts, and he says, like, being headmaster gives me certain privileges.
I see.
I still seem to remember that when they came back from the cave at the end, they had to, like, apparate into Hogsmeade, because it was, like, outside of the border, and then go from there. I don't know. We'll get to it when we get to it. But yeah, so the scene where the trio is telling McGonagall they know about the stone and everything, she, like, freaks out, drops this big stack of books. She's like, how do you know about this? And there's not really anything super notable about this scene, but to me it kind of stands out as, like, this is the moment at which they kind of reveal their true colors, where they're not just normal students, and they're also not just troublemakers. They're, like, constantly aware of things that are going on and getting involved in them. Like,
they're like, oh no, they're protagonists.
Pretty much. And then we have McGonagall and also Snape are both like, why are you here? You should be outside. It's a nice day. And it's... like it would be fine if it was just a normal statement, but there's Snape specifically is just like people might think you're up to something. It's like, I mean, they don't have to be. I guess because it's hot and stuffy in the castle. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Bit weird, isn't it? Reminds me of a stupid dream I had when I was a kid, because I had like two reception teachers, reception basically being kindergarten. The dream was just, I was inside and one of the teachers was like, what are you doing? It's break time. You need to go outside. So I went out to the playground and my other teacher was there. I was like, what are you doing? It's time for class. Go inside. And I would just go in and out and the same thing would happen over and over again.
what are you doing on computer? It's so beautiful! Smash his laptop.
God.
And here we have another instance of McGonagall says, I suppose you think you're harder to get past than a pack of enchantments. There's so much getting past. Like, I should have done a counter for that.
Get past Fluffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm
We could maybe
curious
go
what the
back
count
through this
is.
book and
Maybe.
you could probably do a control F to find it, and then we could,
Yeah.
you know, see if it comes up again later.
It definitely does, because there was the one I quoted last time about Harry having to get past dragons and sphinxes and all other matter of foul things, or however the hell he says it. Like,
God. So then Harry gets a bit of a speech here when Ron and Hermione are like, no, it's too dangerous, you could get expelled. And
yeah, he's just like, who
Harry's
cares?
like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, he's like, if Voldemort comes back, I'm dead anyway, we gotta do something. So, yeah, basically just establishes his, like, motivation and initiative there, and I like that because common wisdom is that an active protagonist is better than a passive reactive one, so.
Yep. And there's a part in there where he's just like, didn't you know what Voldemort was like when he was in power? Like, there won't even be a Hogwarts to come back to. He'll flatten it, or he'll turn it into a school for the dark arts. And so now I'm just imagining the 3-foot-tall cackling Voldemort driving a comically oversized steamroller, just like, flattening the castle.
He just conjures a cartoon anvil to crush
Pretty
the
much,
castle.
yeah.
So, then Hermione mentions that she heard she got 112% on Flitwick's exam, and I'm like, how is that possible? How do they fucking count these exam scores? Like, getting 100 is already kind of ridiculous, at least in exams here in England, from my experience. Like, nobody does that. Even if you're top of the class, you're unlikely to get a completely perfect score. How do you get more than a perfect score? Because extra credit also isn't really a thing. That was only a thing I learned about from American friends. So
Okay, so from my experience, I would say usually on a test, you wouldn't have anything that would count as extra credit. On like maybe like minor ones throughout the year, there would be like 10 questions, and each is worth 10 points up to 100, and then there'll be a bonus question that can give you some extra points. Like, but I don't think that would ever be on like a final exam. The concept of like 100 being unobtainable is definitely weird to me though, because that I always felt like that was a very like reachable goal.
yeah, no, I think they design exams here with the expectation that no one's going to actually get 100.
That's weird.
Because to me, it seems infeasible. To me, it's like saying, oh yeah, like to me, getting a 100% on a test that you have no practice for, right? Like you know what the material is, but you don't know what the questions are going to be. To me, that's basically the equivalent of doing a no damage run of a video game on your first. Like, if you're good at it, yeah, maybe you can do it with getting hit not very often, but no damage, like making no mistakes, doing absolutely everything they want you to do. Because remember, a lot of exams here aren't just multiple choice. Like, there'll be a lot of questions like, explain this, and they'll have to follow a marking scheme of like, how well did you answer this thing? And it's just unlikely that you're going to be able to do it perfect.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of multiple choice here. I was thinking essay questions, but I guess for me it's like, if you are given a question of like, summarize this event in history, or like explain how this scientific thing works, or whatever the hell the question is, like, as long as you hit the points that you're supposed to and get them correct, I feel like that would be 100. Like,
No. I don't know what to tell you. Highest score I've ever... I was top of my class for a lot of classes for a long time. Highest score I ever got on a test was 98.
I guess that is just a cultural difference then.
And that was treated as like a big deal as well.
This is kind of out of nowhere, but this thought is also reminding me of, like, when you, like, rate somebody on looks out of 10, like, oh, that person's a perfect 10 or whatever. Like, I've heard some people say that, like, nobody can actually ever be a perfect 10. Like, the highest anybody can ever rate on this scale is a 9. And that, to me, is stupid. And the same goes for, like, collectible grading, where there was, like, the boxed Mario 64 was a 9.8, the highest score possible. It's like, how is that the highest possible? It can go up to 10. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't have a perfect 10 or 100 unless something has reached that. Like, that's, to me, that just
doesn't
makes
make
sense.
sense.
Like,
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, yeah, what you said makes
like,
sense.
yeah,
Like,
the best one that has ever been found would be the 10. And if you're saying that one is a 9.8, then what the fuck is the 10? So it's just, yeah.
unless you're using
Like,
some other metric where it's like, for example, a 10 is perfect, and then any mistake or like this like issue with it is, condition issue would be like
God.
a micro point taken off. So like, I don't know. When it comes to like beauty, obviously that's subjective. So if somebody literally is like, yeah, this person looks perfect to me, and I see, there's
Yeah.
nothing about them that puts me off, like, why would you not say that that's a 10, right?
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to say on that is later on in the series when Harry's taking his OWLs, he's taking the one for defense against the dark arts, and the person who's, like, scoring him or whatever says, I've heard that you can do a corporeal Patronus for an extra point. Would you mind showing me? So there is a possibility that, like, some of these tests might have, like, bonus things you can do, and Hermione did those. So I guess it's like, I could see that being a thing.
Yeah, fair enough, I guess.
We got way the hell off topic there, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
we did. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think getting over 100% on an exam should count as whimsy from the wizarding world?
I personally would not count it, but if other people say that it is, then maybe.
I'm putting it to the comments.
So anyway, so the only reason that came up is because they're trying to basically, like, see if Snape is going through the door, and now that McGonagall knows what they're up to, they can't really stick around the area. She yells at them, and she says, like, if I see you around here again, I'll take another 50 points from Gryffindor. That's right, Weasley, from my own house. And I'm like, but you took them before from your own house. Why are you emphasizing this? But anyway, so yeah, they do that, and they're like, Hermione, you can go, like, try to keep an eye on Snape by, like, going to the teacher's lounge or whatever and, like, asking Flitwick for, like, you're like, oh, I think I got this question wrong. So she, like, go and does this, and that's where that whole thing comes from. She finds out that she got that score. But anyway, they're basically preparing to head out to go, like, past Fluffy or whatever. And Harry pocketed the flute. We have our first instance of pocketed it. Which I don't know if we'll necessarily want to track, but
The Stephen Fry tears counter.
yes. For anybody who doesn't know, there was apparently an issue with Stephen Fry, who did one of the audiobooks, having a hard time saying... Well, there was, like, a second person who did them.
Well, he was one of the people that did them.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a problem with saying pocketed it, because it's just awkward to say, and apparently just kind of, like, out of spite... Rowling just put it in, like, every book from that point on.
Well, he requested that she use the phrase less, and just to be a dick, she put it in more, I think.
I've heard that it was because, like, there was some beef between them. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, I don't remember that. I thought it was just like a friendly joke.
See, I when I first heard it, I thought it was a friendly joke, and then I heard people like claiming that there was like some other motivation behind it, where like
Huh?
he said something negative about her books at one point, and then she was doing this to get back at him or something. I don't know.
That's so petty.
Yeah, but yeah, so they're preparing to
Right.
leave, and Neville is standing up to them basically like, if you do this, we're going to get in more trouble. I'm not going to let you. And this is like his big defining moment of the book, which is not very much. They just kind of deal with it and move on. And
I mean, it is a significant moment for his character because the whole book he's been kind of cowardly and getting stepped on, and he does basically get ran through again, but he at least
yeah.
tries this.
And so going way back here, my first exposure to this series was hearing teachers read it out loud, like just kind of during breaks, like maybe one chapter at a time. And I never really paid much attention to it, so I didn't really know any of the characters. And when the first movie came out, I remember hearing somebody say, like, they you barely even get to know who Neville is. Like when that thing at the end of the movie happens, like you don't even really remember his character. And I'm just like, who's Neville? So I guess it was they were correct. But I hadn't even seen the movie either, so I don't know.
Good.
Point is, he does have more of a role in this book than I remembered.
Yeah.
Especially before Hermione really joins the like main characters. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what point I
Even
was
after
making
he's
here.
there during Quidditch and then the Forbidden Forest section, so
Right. So
um, we have another reference to wanting to kick Mrs. Norris when Ron's like, "Come on, just one."
yeah, kick a duck up the arse.
And then following that, so this is when Harry and Ron and Hermione are like sneaking through the castle with the invisibility cloak to get to the trapdoor room. They fucking encounter Peeves, and he's like, "I'm gonna tell Filch on you," and then Harry fucking impersonates the Bloody Baron somehow and convinces Peeves to leave. I want to know how the fuck he did this. Like, the Bloody Baron, I imagine, I mean, he is an adult dead ghost man with presumably like an adult sounding male voice, and Harry's fucking 11, so
And probably has not heard the ghost like speak ever. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
maybe even if he has, like, I can't see him doing a good impression, but somehow this works.
yeah.
And
And so,
this is the kind of thing I couldn't see being in a later book, other than like the first two.
so here's the issue with this scene is I misremembered this, and I was like foreshadowing this coming up last time, and I was wrong about it because
Oh yeah.
I thought that Ron did the impression, and the reason for that is because there is a very subtle and apparently even like fewer examples than I thought. Like this thing fucking never comes up, but like a subtle bit of foreshadowing that like Ron is good at doing impressions. And
Oh,
this eventually pays off with him like being able
the
to open the
puzzle time.
Chamber of Secrets because he heard
Right.
Harry say open to open the locket.
Hmm.
Because like you also it also happens when they're escaping Malfoy's like dungeon, and he like impersonates Peter Pettigrew. Like it comes up a couple times. I think there's like, well, I'm gonna be watching out for this now because I thought this was the first instance of it happening, but apparently it's not. So,
Right.
but I think there are a couple times where he does this.
I think if that was an intentional aspect of his character and Rowling was able to like do first drafts of the entire series and then edit the whole thing before releasing the first one, this probably would have been changed to Ron, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like Hermione's like little blue fire thing. It's just like a little thing that pops up here and there.
yeah.
So anyway,
Pop up again in a minute.
yeah. So they go open the door. Fluffy's in there, and this whole bit of them, like Harry pulls out this flute and has no idea how to play it, so he's probably just like just random notes. Like this dog just falls asleep immediately, and I find this hilarious because it's never described as like a magical weakness of the three-headed dog species that we don't know the name of. Like Hagrid just says that, oh, he'll calm down when he hears music and fall asleep right away. So it's like I'm just imagining, like with a normal living creature, It's like, you sing it a lullaby or something to calm it down. It doesn't drop fucking dead, like, after hearing one note. And so I
Yeah.
love the way it's described here. It's just like, as soon as Harry put the flute to his lips and blows a single note, immediately the dog's eyes get droopy. And I'm like, that's a bit much. But whatever
I
works.
don't know.
It's a magical thing. It's just, it never
Yeah.
really felt like one to me.
Hmm.
And,
Um.
so yeah, as we enter this dungeon here, an ongoing theme throughout the entire thing is the whole thing just is whimsy.
Yeah.
It is a video game level, which is surprising to me coming from this author who presumably doesn't know anything about that. Like, you have this type of stuff in other media, but I feel like it's more of a video game level than like anything else.
Hmm.
And so here we basically just have contrivance because the story, like, they have to get through this, but there's no way that there should be like there's no way this should be designed in such a way that 11-year-olds
That's
can get
fair.
through this thing.
Yeah. It
Like,
should be unfair. Not
yeah,
the design is not to challenge someone to get through it. The design is to fucking stop somebody from entering in the first place. This should basically have just been a bunch of magical booby traps.
yeah, like, all these rooms have a solution and they really shouldn't. And the thing that I'm pointing out here is going to be obscure to most people, but in Fablehaven, there's like an ongoing trend in the series that basically, like, the laws of magic say that anything that can be done must be able to be undone. And the example given is, if you try to make a lock that is absolutely impossible to open, then the magic will basically fall apart and it won't work at all. And so the solution is to make it as complicated as possible while still like technically being doable, and that's the
Yeah.
best way to make something like,
Secure.
yeah, to make something secure. And so
That makes sense to me.
if that's this, like, we're applying one series logic to another one here, but if that's the logic that we were going to go with here, they did a shit job.
Yeah,
And
they could have done a lot more.
so let's just go through these one at a time. So
Yeah, the first one, other than Fluffy, the first one is Devil's Snare, which is just, I guess this one relies on you having herbological knowledge, I guess. Um,
and hopefully not thinking of Pokemon type weaknesses. It's a plant. I should use fire.
yeah.
But
This is a particularly infamous or notorious scene because of how they did Ron Dirty in the movie. It's the first, like, really major example of it.
yeah, well,
In the
before we even
series.
get to that, you wrote the thing about, like, how deep was this drop.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, because they're like they fall for a while and then they're like, whoa, we must be miles under the school, and I'm like, no, you're fucking not. You would have died from terminal velocity before even 1 mile. I'm pretty sure.
well, when
So
you say that, like, what do you mean exactly? Because you can't, like, terminal velocity is just like a speed that you reach while falling. You don't die if you hit that.
I don't know how it works, but I know that when people jump off buildings and shit like that, they die before they hit the ground.
No.
Yes, they do. I'm pretty sure they do. If it's
I,
high enough, they will. That's what I learned in, like, physics class when we were learning about terminal velocity. I
well,
think.
then how do you...
Unless I hit somewhere else.
I mean, then how do you jump out of an airplane and not die? Because, like,
Because you don't reach terminal velocity because you use a parachute.
I guess we'll have to see what people say, because I'm pretty sure, like, I actually looked this up beforehand. Terminal velocity is just, like, the point at which you stop gaining speed.
Yes.
And it's, like, I read things that were like, if you fell into a bottomless pit, that was, like, truly bottomless, falling forever, like, terminal velocity, or, like, just the fact that you're falling this quickly doesn't actually do anything to the human body other than, like, it's uncomfortable because of the wind. And so, like,
That's not what I've heard.
if that was to happen, you would just die of dehydration before anything else.
Yeah, no, I've heard that if you start falling fast enough, you'll just die.
I've definitely not heard that, but maybe. Either way, point is, they fall through this giant pit and land in this plant, which is apparently enough to, like, cushion the fall to which they don't get injured, which I don't know how the hell that happens. Because it's described as, like, Harry looks up at the postage stamp sized, like, bit of light up above that was the trapdoor. It's like, how fucking far down did you fall? But
Yeah.
anyway, they fall into this thing, and so yeah, the way that they do it in the movie, her, there's this weird poem that she says in the movie. It's like, Devil's Snare, it's loads of fun, but it'll sulk in the sun. Devil's Snare hates sunlight. And then she
Yeah.
casts, like, this thing that just creates a bunch of light, and then the plant roars. Like, like, what the fuck is this scene? But yeah, and the book version is way better here because they all kind of have
So
their strengths.
for the record, I just looked it up, and apparently I was wrong. I don't know where I heard this from, because the thing I saw claimed that it's like, oh, it's a common belief, but it's a misconception. I'm like, I was under the impression that it was like an uncommon piece of knowledge that like most people didn't know this, but it was true. But no, apparently it's not. So you were correct.
Okay,
I don't know
well,
where the hell I heard this from.
I'm sorry then.
It's fine. Why are you apologizing for reality?
I don't know. I just didn't want you to feel bad. But
No, I'm fine.
anyways, so yeah, like you were saying, the movie does Ron dirty here. Did you want to
Right.
go on about that, or should I? Like,
I mean, it's basically just they give Ron, they take away a moment of Ron being intelligent and Hermione having a bit of a failure, and just, oh, they just make it all about Hermione being super smart.
yeah. So yeah, the way the book version works is they land in this thing and it's like strangling them or whatever, and Hermione's like, "Oh, this is Devil's Snare. I just have to remember how to defeat it." And then she realizes, or no, Harry is like, light a fire, and then she's like, "Oh, but there's no wood." And Ron's like, "What do you mean there's no wood? Like, are you a witch? Use..." And instead, then, like, she uses
Yeah.
the fire and they escape. And so it's a moment showing that, like, she cracks under pressure. Ron is a little bit more level-headed, even if he doesn't necessarily have the intelligence to get through it. Or whatever. They all kind of, like, play their roles there. In the movie, they give it all to Hermione,
Yeah, because
partially because they cut the potion puzzle and they had to give her something to do, but also just because the screenwriters fucking love her and they make Ron into a joke. So
yeah. So I think in the movie they make a deal out of like, how you're not supposed to struggle in it or something, and like
Yeah.
Hermione is able to relax her body and fall out of it, while the other two, like, she's like, stop moving, and they're like,
yeah, Ron's
she's, like,
just screaming
seriously
a
making
lot,
it
and he's
worse.
like, "Oh, lucky we didn't panic." It's like, God.
Yeah. Annoying. So following that, we have
So yeah, next we have this key puzzle. And I'm actually going to point this out later, so I might as well just mention it now, though. So each of these traps is supposed to be designed by one of the teachers, and there's no rule that they each, like, have to follow their specific, like, study or whatever. But as, like, a kid's story and, like, a video game, like, final exam dungeon, it kind of makes sense for them to be that way. And so this key room is supposedly Flitwick's, and the chess room coming up is supposedly McGonagall's, according to Hermione. She could be wrong about this.
Hermione's, yeah,
But,
Hermione just suspects it.
yeah, I imagine it's the other way around, because McGonagall's thing is transfiguration. Hermione says a thing with, like, oh, she must have transfigured the chess pieces to come to life. Like, that's not a thing, is it? Like, you
Yeah, she's like, she must
transfigure
have
something into something else.
Yeah, they're like,
Like-
they must have transfigured these chess pieces into having the property of being alive. Meanwhile,
Yeah, so...
Flitwick must have put a charm on the keys that made them transform into keys with wings. It's
Yeah,
like-
so I'm imagining this is more of, like, McGonagall turning birds into keys, and she has, like, the association with Quidditch, like, she's a fan of it, like, wants Harry to win it, all that stuff. So it makes sense for it to be her puzzle. And then Flitwick has the chessboard, like, bringing the pieces to life with a charm or whatever, and, like, he's a Ravenclaw, so he's smart. I don't... That one's a little bit more tenuous, but, I don't know. I feel like those make more sense the other way around.
Probably.
So,
It's the kind of thing that doesn't really matter as a detail. Like, it could have been either way.
yeah,
Like, Hermione could just be wrong.
she
It's the
could.
kind of thing where things like that don't tend to be the case unless they get addressed later, but it also doesn't matter. So, I don't know.
I know. I'm not even nitpicking it. It's just I feel like that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so in this, so the way to get through this room, here's the thing. There's broomsticks in here already, which is a failure on designing the dungeon. If it's supposed to be impossible to get through, don't give them the tools needed.
Right.
And for a second, I'm like, maybe they were left there by Quirrell-Demort, but no, there's several broomsticks. There's not just one.
Yeah.
So this section could have been written to be
But there's only
Harry
one.
flying on his own because he's the
Yeah.
Seeker and he gets the thing.
Ron and Hermione don't even do anything in this scene anyway.
Not really. Ron eats shit though. There's a line. Harry's like, that one, that big one with bright blue wings. Ron went speeding in the direction that Harry was pointing, crashed into the ceiling, and nearly fell off his room. but
God.
so yeah, it's like they give the means necessary to get through this, and also like I am wondering if you identify which one you need, can you just be like Accio that one? And just like I'm wondering what the
Yeah.
restrictions are on that spell. Like if you'd be able to actually do that. But I don't know. We have our little callback to Quidditch here. And that's fine for what it is. Then we get the chess game, and as soon as I got to this part, I stopped reading and I googled a bunch of stuff and I like did a bunch of like extra reading on this because I'm like I want to talk about this. Then I went back and actually read it, and this chess game is over in the blink of an eye. Like
Yeah. They lost like half a page.
I forgot how short this thing was. Because they make a much bigger deal out of it in the movie. But so first thing is extremely minor. Ron says you can take the place of that castle. I don't know if that's a cultural thing, like calling it a castle instead of a rook. Do you know?
I've only heard people call it a rook. Castle, like castle in chess, usually refers to the special move you can make where you kind of tuck the king away at using a rook.
Yeah,
That's weird.
yeah, I've heard of that before. I googled it. I found like an answer for where the term rook came from, which I didn't write down because I don't really care. But
Isn't it like a place where you swing through the birds or something?
I don't know. But I found it odd that he called it that because I remember specifically in Deathly Hollows when they find the Lovegood's house, he specifically says it looks like a rook, and then Hermione says, "What do you mean? It doesn't look anything like a bird." He's like, "No, not a bird, the chess piece."
Oh, right.
So he calls it a rook there, but he calls it a castle here. So I don't know, whatever. That was the one I was like, I'm not sure if that's an unlocalized Britishism, if you called it castle over there, but
I've never
maybe
heard
you
it.
don't. So as for this game, apparently there was a lot more thought put into it for the movie version. I have a website here that I can link in the description from
Okay.
the person who actually they got like somebody who's really good at chess to actually like create the game, like the state of the game necessary to lead to the climax without like having
Okay.
to fudge it.
Yeah.
And so like the problem with the movie version is like they had all this stuff, they had it prepared ahead of time, but then they like cut a bunch of it for time, and so like there's a part that just doesn't make sense anyway, apparently.
Oh, good.
But I'm not getting into it. It's a really long thing. It involves analyzing chess moves. I don't give a shit.
Right.
But it's there
I might have a
if
look
you're
at this
interested. And the other thing is I had remembered reading that like the way this chess game played out was supposed to be like symbolism for the characters or like something to happen later in the series, and I couldn't remember what exactly it was. I found a post from 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure I read this a long time before that, but this was the best one I could find. And this is going to be kind of a long read, but I'll read it out anyway because I just think it's kind of interesting. And I will say that I personally believe this is probably people looking into things more than they need to, and just kind
Yeah.
of
It's
making
always worth remembering that human pattern
yeah,
recognition
it's
is
like
way too
making
specific.
connections where there are none, but it's still kind of cool. So, Hermione plays a rook, a powerful piece in conventional circumstances. It can wreak havoc on the board, but it's limited by its constraint to straight lines. It also can't defend itself when not attacked head on. Hermione is a brilliant witch, but she's constantly hampered by her belief of what is or isn't. Her love of logic is her greatest strength and weakness. Straight lines are how she thinks. This makes her individually the strongest, but without support, she can lose sight of the objective. Ron plays the knight, valuable strategically but limited in range, best used in early to mid-game for clearing the board or in close quarters where it can jump its opponents. Very effective in defense. Ron is often considered the least impressive of the trio, and he plays a less pivotal role in the endgame, but early to mid-game he's useful often in making key moves that allow Harry and Hermione to move forward. He's also at his best when he's defending others. Though he's noted for his betrayal of Harry, he's also incredibly protective of his two friends, and let's not forget the more superficial reference of a keeper being a defensive position. Harry plays the bishop, less powerful than the rook, but far more versatile. The bishop is at its strongest when supported by other pieces. The use of pawns especially allow the king to be herded into a trap, and the bishop can strike in one blow and win the match. Harry is a moderately powerful wizard. He's no Voldemort or Dumbledore, though. And frankly, though, he is competent in his own right. Harry tends to be less than effective when he tries to do things completely on his own, but with the support of his friends, he becomes the hero of the story. And like the bishop, with the other pieces helping him, he becomes the perfect piece to topple the king. It's probably a little bit more wordier than it needed to be, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It fits. I feel like it's maybe like astrology where you can make anything fit, but
Yeah, it's like if you shuffled these, could you make an argument for Harry being the rook and Hermione being the knight and Ron being
possibly.
the bishop?
But I remembered reading something about that a long time ago, and I think there was some other weird shit like Dumbledore is the king pulling the strings, and like I can't remember if the Ron is Dumbledore theory somehow came into it.
Oh God, do you want to talk about that?
I don't know what there is to talk about. It's just there was a popular theory. It was before Half-Blood Prince came out, where people thought Dumbledore was like Ron having like time traveled or something,
Mm.
and like there were reasons to support it, but it was weird. I don't really know. It's been like it's been proven to be wrong. Like J.K. Rowling
Of
said, like
course.
no, this is not a thing. But I don't know. It's just it's a weird piece of like history with this series, I guess.
Yeah. Um.
So that's the chess
So
game.
yeah. Then there's two more puzzles. One of which, well, not puzzles,
Oh,
but I guess. Hmm?
actually, there was one other thing about the chess game.
Okay.
I liked the way that the movie ended it better because in the movie Ron kind of gets like this speech where he says like it's like it's not like he has to sacrifice himself for them to win the game, and he's like, Harry, you're the one who has to go forward, not me, not Hermione, you. And he kind of like he's like, you know, this is I got you this far. He kind of has a moment there. In the book there's just none of that, and it
Yeah.
was kind of surprising. I thought that they were going to have that in there, but
Well, it's gonna be
there's
perfect.
kind of a
Let's
bit
try.
with it. Hermione does it in like the next room.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, so then they have two things left, one of which is a troll that's already knocked out, and then following that is the potion puzzle, and they deduce that the troll was Quirrell's, which acts as a sort of a last minute hint. It's like, oh, Quirrell knows about like handling trolls. Like it could potentially lead the viewer or the reader to suspect that Quirrell was behind the troll after all, and thus the villain. Obviously that's about to get proven in like 3 pages anyway, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so they basically get past the troll with no problem. They get past the troll room because it's
Yes.
already knocked out. And then
And
they have the
they
potion logic puzzle. Huh?
specifically they have to step over the troll's leg, and I'm just like, how small is this room? But
Yeah.
I'm also part of the critical side of me is like, who's bringing like food down to the troll? But whatever.
Um,
So yeah,
Think
we get to the logic puzzle, and you
um
had some stuff to say
yeah,
about this one.
I actually was like, okay, I'm gonna see if these clues are enough to solve it, and they are, which is, I don't know if it's surprising
Well,
or not. I
sort
mean, I guess
of.
uh, it's not solvable for the reader, but you can get close enough such that if you were physically there in the room, you could solve it. I'm gonna go through
Yeah.
how it works.
Because the
Basically, it
problem
says
is
that
that we don't get to see what sizes
the
the bottles
sizes.
are, and that's
Yeah.
critical to knowing what the safe one
So
is.
the main clues are that both of there's three poisons, two wines, one potion that will make you immune to the purple flames behind you, and one potion, or which one's purple, which one's white, whatever. One potion will make you immune to the flames behind you, one potion will make you immune to the flames ahead of you. Um, and they basically said the clues are as follows. The one from the second on the left and the second from the right look different, but if you taste them both, they will be the same. The fact
So
that you can taste,
presumably those are wine.
yeah, presumably those are wine. That's the only one that there's multiple of that you could drink multiple of without dying. It says if you taste both of them, you would not be able to taste both poisons. So, so that means that they're both wine. Next, it says that to the left of wine is always a poison. So that means that the far left one and the one to the right of the middle is poison.
And then there's one other poison somewhere.
Then it says that the ones on the ends are not helpful to you, which means that
Well, not helpful to proceed. One of
not
them, I
helpful
think,
to
is the one to
proceed,
go
yeah.
back, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's
I
right. It says
actually
not helpful
did,
to go back.
because I read through this and I was trying to figure out, like, I was reading it, I'm just like, okay, we can determine all this stuff, but then I'm like, how do we know which is the one going forward and which is back? Because none of the hints actually help you, but I was wrong, because that one does. I had to
Yeah,
reread it a few times to
yeah,
notice
it
that.
says, I think it says like that they're different, but neither of them will help you proceed or something. Um, I don't remember exactly, but basically this allows you to deduce that the far right one is the back. That means that the middle one and the one on its left are, one of them is a poison and one of them is the one to proceed. And it says that neither the giant nor the dwarf is dangerous, basically.
Right.
And because the book does not tell us the size of the potions lined up, we cannot actually tell whether it was the middle one or the one on its left. But basically, for this puzzle to be solvable, one of them had to have been either the dwarf or the giant. I don't know if this meant that like the potions were all different sizes, or if 5 of them
I
were the
think
same
they
size.
were.
One was big and one was small. I assume that by dwarf they just mean the
The smallest.
smallest, and giant they mean the biggest. So basically, if whichever of the two was either the largest or the smallest of all of them, then that one is safe. And Hermione does indeed say the one on the far right is the one to go back, and this smallest potion is the one to go forward. So
Yep.
yeah, it's internally consistent, and I quite enjoyed the puzzle.
Yeah. I can definitely see why they cut it from the movie, because it's not very interesting to watch, and so that's why they kind of had to give Hermione her moment to shine earlier. But in the book, it works out well. It does make me wonder if they're like, if you are able to cast some sort of like protection spell on yourself, if you can just run through the fire and say fuck the whole thing.
Yeah,
Because
I
I don't know if like this was ever directly stated anywhere, but at least on the Harry Potter wiki, for the chess room, it said that like Quirrell most likely just got past it by using like a concealment charm and just didn't even bother playing the game. And Dumbledore, when he had to go through to like save Harry, would have just like used something to like shrink the pieces down to like their original size and just walk past the whole thing. So it's like it's going to show even more like how pointless these protections are, where
Yeah.
you can just completely bypass them.
Any semi-competent
Like-
wizard could. Yeah.
It's kind of stupid. But
Like I said, some alarms and booby traps would have done way better.
yeah. I'm still surprised that Fluffy
Maybe a maze.
managed to hold out for as long as it did.
Right.
Like, okay, we can put it to sleep with music, but is it immune to Avada Kedavra? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
So yeah, Harry gets to the final room.
Well,
Um,
before we even do that, we have the
yeah,
last bit with Hermione. Harry basically is just like,
there's only enough for one
yeah,
person to get
there's only
through.
enough for one person to get through, which is also showing to me that either the potion refilled itself or they just said fuck it and jumped through the fire. But
Right.
yeah, there's like this whole bit between them where Hermione says you're a great wizard, and it's like, well, he's never done any magic, so I don't know about that. But and then he's like, well, I'm not as good as you. She says, like, there's more things important than, like, books and cleverness or whatever. They kind of have a moment. And then Harry's like, you go back and, like, take Ron, grab the broomsticks and, like, escape, and then send an owl to Dumbledore. He says, like, I might be able to, like, stall Snape or Voldemort or whatever, but, like, I know I don't stand a chance against them. So I'm just thinking, like, okay, so what was your plan here? Like,
Yeah.
I understand you're kind of charging in and then probably realizing too late, like, oh shit, I didn't have a plan, and that's probably the point.
Hmm.
But it's just, it really stood out to me here where it's just like, wow, he really doesn't know what they're doing. Like,
Yeah, he kind of just got lucky in the next chapter. So
yeah. And then we just have the last line here. There was already someone there, but it wasn't Snape. It wasn't even Voldemort. And then that's just the end of the chapter, which,
mhm. Now,
because,
granted, if your eyes glance over like to literally the opposite page in my edition, you
oh,
can
good.
immediately see who the person is. But
Nice. I guess it depends on if it's on the left or right page.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like, so I knew the twist anyway when I first like actually read the book or saw the movie or whichever it was. And like anytime that I reread the series, I usually don't pay attention to where chapters begin and end. Um, I'll just kind of like keep reading until I feel tired or whatever. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I do remember this line again. Going back to Mark Reed's Harry Potter, that line like pissed him off because he would always do like one chapter and then not even look at the next one until doing like the write up for the day, and then would wait for the next day to read. He's just like, it wasn't Snape, it wasn't even Voldemort. He's like, oh come on, what is this cliffhanger bullshit? Like, and then the next chapter it just starts out with it was Quirrell. He's like, oh shit. So so yeah, pretty effective cliffhanger, I think.
Yeah, I liked it. Aside from the extreme contrivance of the past few chapters, it's been entertaining and a good time. So
Yeah, there's I God, I'm curious like how some of this stuff was set up in terms of like
planning.
when it was put here because
Oh,
as we find out later, the mirror is in the next room, and the mirror was not here during Christmas break.
I assumed that
And
they just kind of had the stone in like a box or something, and they're like, "There's got to be something better we can put it in."
yeah, I don't know. So it's like, yeah, the mirror wasn't there at Christmas. Fluffy had been there since the beginning of the year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's really not that much intrigue behind that. It's just, it was weird that they, I guess, decided later to like stick that thing down there and then to take it past all the other puzzles again, which Dumbledore would probably
Right.
effortlessly just disarm as he goes. And it's like, yeah, this will keep Voldemort out.
I assume it's supposed to slow them down, so that I assume they got to have some way of sensing that somebody's gone in there, and
Yeah, maybe.
presumably these are just to slow them down for long enough to, I don't know.
I also don't remember if in any of the later books if we find out like that Dumbledore basically expected Harry to try and get through all this and it was like a test. Because if so, then that's pretty
Dick
fucking
move.
terrible to like, you know, set up these deadly traps for him to get past and just like, oh, it'll be fine. I don't remember if that's ever confirmed.
I'm not
It's
sure.
another thing I'll have to watch out for.
Yeah.
But as a like I said, as a final exam dungeon, this is good. It's just it doesn't make sense as soon as you analyze it like at all.
Yeah,
So
I guess.
But it
I
makes
don't
for
know.
a
I
fun
mean,
climax.
yeah, it's interesting because like often actual final exam dungeons in video games don't make sense either. Why would the villain make their lair possible for the heroes to get through
Yeah.
by solving their puzzles and shit in the first place either? Like, but we accept it in that because oh, that's just what video games do. But
Yeah.
we're not extending that same courtesy, I guess, just because books don't usually do this sort
Yeah, I
of
feel
thing.
like video games kind of ignore logic more often than things that are like
Yeah.
strictly story based.
You could argue that it's like a layer of abstraction or something like that.
So yeah, just to be clear, I'm not like complaining like, oh my god, this is terrible writing. Why would they do this?
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
it's fine.
kind of poking fun at the holes. So
Right. That's
is
pretty much it,
that,
I guess.
yeah, I think that's
Unless you have
about
any
what we
closing
got on
thoughts.
this one.
Next time we'll be wrapping up the book with The Man with Two Faces and probably talking about the book as a whole.
Yeah. And
And
then
yeah,
I think we're doing the movie, and then probably taking a little bit of a break before Chamber of Secrets is my guess.
yeah,
There was talk about potentially looking at the games. I'm still not like entirely sold on that, but if we
I'm
do,
not sure.
maybe not until after the rest of the stuff. I kind of want
Probably
to do
not
the
yet.
books and the movies, and then we can maybe go
Yeah,
back.
yeah. I figured that would be how we do it. So yeah, thanks for listening, and see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Keep on trangling.